Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show will have a talk about a Linux project, such as a Linux distribution, a desktop environment, or application. We'll also chat about any news or any variety of topics from the community. Anything that is Linux tech and open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, a Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the glorious OpenSUSE project. And with me today, I got a fantastic panel of people. I got Swift and Adam Grubbs that just stepped in through the door. I could hear the floors creaking as they walked in. Ulfnick, Jinda, Brian, Dan, Colin, and of course the man who keeps me organized the best that he can, Eris. How is everybody?
Doing well.
Good.
Good.
Excellent. Well, we're going to have quite the topic, quite a list of topics tonight, for sure. But first, before we get into any of the news flight, I want to welcome Dan, who I haven't seen in a long time. And I'm like, what have you been doing in Linux and tech? What are the exciting projects on your plate?
Well, since you put me on the spot like that, I'll go with the shameless plug. Over in Linux user space land, we've actually created a Lemmie instance. So I've been doing some sysadmin stuff. I guess I'm the de facto sysadmin for Linux user space. And so I created Lemmie, our Lemmie space, and that is the Reddit alternative, if you haven't known. So it's like federated Reddit, if you will.
Gotcha.
And so I've been having a lot of fun, and Leo has too. Basically, things that we were doing on Reddit, now we're doing over on Lemmie, and so we're sharing our news feeds. We're looking for feedback. It's kind of like our forum, if you will. We got like a little forum thread over there. So if people have things they want to throw our way, they can go over there and give us suggestions. And like I said, they can talk about all the news items that we're throwing up there. It's a lot of fun.
I was just gonna ask if you could put a link in the show, like in the chat. But Eris beat you to it, so thank you, Eris. It's what he does. Between Jinda and Eris, they'll one of them will get it in there before I can even like find it. Even if it's my link.
Yeah, I know.
So,
same.
Yeah. So is the move to Lemmie, or is it like a kind of a move, or just an alternative space because of some Reddit issues that have kind of cropped up in the news?
Right now for us, we haven't totally moved. We're keeping it an alternate space. But it's always good to have backup plans and alternatives.
For sure.
I think we've found that we reach greater audience that way, and we keep about the same numbers across everything, but there are some people that don't aren't part of one network and they're part of another one. So it's nice to be able to reach everybody wherever they are, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. You have some people who are only on Telegram or only on Matrix or only on Discord, and some people who have got them all woven together like some sort of tapestry.
Yep.
That's probably you, right? You have them all woven together?
I have a lot, and I do, watch as many as I can, obviously. But yeah, so we're just trying it out. It's fairly new, and it seems to be good so far. I mean, good experience. Honestly, it's pretty easy to administer as well. It doesn't take a lot of resources. It's kind of a small machine that we've got going on. And they've got like Ansible playbooks and stuff that you can use to manage it all. So it's automated. That's pretty nice stuff too. Makes it easier.
That was my next question. How time intensive is and resource intensive is running Lemmie as a service?
It's not very. I mean, obviously we don't have a lot of people on our instance. And we're not like, some of the bigger ones that have thousands of people. I can only imagine what that takes. Ours is really small. I've just got it on a Nanode over on Linode, which is just 1 gig of RAM, 25 gig hard drive, really small. one CPU. So there are times where it'll use swap a little bit because the RAM is probably needs a little more, but for the most part, it just runs just fine.
That's pretty cool. I wonder, do you think this is do you see the open source or Linux world skating toward the Lemmie kind of way of doing information?
I do actually.
Forums.
Recently, like yesterday or today, I saw the KDE group. They've got their own Lemmie instance now, and so they're starting to put some of their news out there in their threads. Yeah, Carl Schwann, he spun up Lemmie, so that's pretty cool. I know System 76 has done the same thing. So you see Pop OS news and System 76 information out there. And there's a bunch of other, you know, Linux open source type news stuff that gets published all over the place. So I do see it taking a foothold and taking off.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that, and I think I've used this quote many times, but if you remember from Star Wars, when Princess Leia told Darth Vader, "The harder you squeeze, the more systems will slip between your fingers." I feel like some of these businesses who are doing those squeezes are inevitably just losing more than they are able to retain, and I think it's unfortunate, that they haven't that this is the way it's going to go. But I mean, I think that ultimately over time it'll be a net positive. I think for everybody, and I think the internet, I believe, was meant to be a decentralized place
Yep.
for to share information, and so the fact that things are kind of sort of going back toward that, I think that's actually a positive thing more than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a grassroots sort of effort to that, movement, and things like Mastodon, while not entirely a Twitter replacement, has really gotten a foothold, and it is very popular now. I would say maybe starting to plateau a little bit, but I mean, there's a lot of activity over there. You can get a lot of information, so I think the success of that has led into other things following.
Does Eric want to say something? He looks like he's like just
I do.
chomping at the
I do.
bit.
You're talking about Mastodon, right? I got here late.
Well, so we were talking about Lemmie, but now I've moved on to Mastodon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was personally
That's
an
a
early
good
adopter.
place to start. I like
yeah.
that.
I was an early adopter of
So-
Mastodon, like I think 2017, I believe, when it first started
Mhm.
being talked about. And I've actually always liked the Mastodon format better, but I like the feed better in Twitter, if that makes any sense. So, like lately with Twitter, it's been kind of nice because I'm only getting the things I want now. Like for a long time, I had to like put out all these filters to keep Twitter from making me angry, and now I don't have to actually run any filters, which has been great. And so I just see my nerdy content. It only offers me nerdy content. I don't see any of the garbage. You know what I'm talking about? Garbage.
Yeah.
I don't see
The nonsense.
just the
Something somebody else thought you might want to see.
right, the vitriol, the sludge that like I thought Twitter was for just the longest time. Now actually it's been great. Like, so I like the feed there better, but I like the user interface experience better in Mastodon. So I just kind of wish that maybe there's a way I could get them both together, like in one, have the best of both worlds. And I don't mean Borg. We're gonna do a Star Trek reference.
Yeah.
I actually agree with that a lot. I really like the premise of Mastodon. I've tried it, like you're saying, Nate, that you tried it years ago, have been using it for years. At first, there was just not really anybody there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I didn't stick with it. But I am having a problem now with the way that the feed works. And I get that there's a personal feed, a local feed, and a global feed. But I feel like I've followed enough people now that I get so much stuff that I really don't necessarily want to see. And I find myself spending a really, really long time trying to get to things that are actually interesting to me. And so I am also having a hard time with the feed, and it's kept me from really getting into it. And I don't know if I'm just doing something wrong, or I don't have the temperament and the patience to cycle through literally dozens or hundreds of posts. So anyway, that's kind of where I am with it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think finding the balance is the hard part, right? I mean, you can mute different things and, you can search for different things. There's different ways to do it. I think from that standpoint, it's really powerful in what it has available to you, but you have to know how to get it down to where it's manageable to see the things you want to see. And so following hashtags is good, but it could be a lot. And so I'm not sure. You
Do
just
you
have to find the people that you like, I guess, more
do,
than
do you
anything.
feel like it's so I guess this is my problem with, and I'm sorry to butt in on this, but I
No,
just
Good.
go right ahead.
I feel like this is my difficulty is it starts to become difficult. Like that's actually a decent amount of work to kind of,
Hmm.
find what you need to specifically look at. And, and this is where I kind of think algorithms and a little bit of intelligence comes into play. And maybe that's what social media, it's not so much the mechanism, but the content that's the problem. Because I really do find and appreciate when things are promoted to me that actually I do enjoy. And I think social media is pretty good at that. And I hope that
Hmm.
Mastodon, I hope that there can be something that's a little more intelligent, maybe something with AI, or I really don't know what the answer is, but some way to kind of say, okay, here's what you've responded favorably to in the past. Here's this new thing over here that maybe you aren't following or has gotten lost in your feed, somehow to get it to bubble up
Yeah.
without me having to do literally hours worth of work to filter it properly. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I think I'm the opposite. I've always found it frustrating in the other platforms when I couldn't get all of everything,
gotcha.
in a chronological order and whatnot, and they thought they'd just throw certain random things here and there,
Yeah,
and that's been always been frustrating for me. I just want to see it. It's just I'll sort through it. I can sort pretty
gotcha.
quick,
Gotcha.
So in a way, I'm a little bit of an opposite, sort
Gotcha.
of thought on it.
It must be a skill that that I just, because I've always looked at Twitter forever and just gone, how can you follow this? Once
Mhm.
you get past 20, 30, 40 people you're following, especially if they're chatty, like I'm just going to call out Popey.
Mhm.
Love him. I'd really do. Like, I think he has a lot to contribute and I appreciate most of his stuff, but he posts a lot. And so you follow him and you follow 10 people like him, and all of a sudden it's like,
Yeah.
it's a fire hose. And so, yeah, I know I'm sort of beating the same drum, but that's a skill that I guess I just don't really have. I haven't developed it yet in however many years it's been. So anyway, there is some, I will agree with you that there is some amazing content there now. It seems like it's really got a critical mass. There's a lot of creators, there's a lot of
Mhm.
news outlets, there's a lot of, there's just a lot of really great, clean, well written, vetted sort of
Yeah.
content. Nothing really too bombastic or, kind of clickbaity, ridiculous. I'm sure it exists, but nothing that I've seen at least. So, but I guess it's all who you follow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. And speaking of follow, I forgot to follow the show notes here and tell you to do the straw poll when you get a chance. Make sure you knock out that straw poll. It's a great one on hardware decision making. So check that out. On you knock that out quickly.
Yeah,
It's
that
what
was an
what?
interesting question, I must
Yeah,
say.
yeah. I didn't go with the masses on that one. It seems like. Yeah, I wonder what the future of federated things are going to be. I wonder if like the beauty of federated is that it's more customizable, but things are less discoverable. But sometimes, yeah, I just don't know how it's gonna all work out. But I hope it works out for the best ultimately. So
And
well,
maybe it is the case that more people are like Dan and they don't want that interference. They want to see what's there. And maybe there'll be something where it's customizable and I think of granularity of like searches in some places where I can pick a lot of different criteria and possibly maybe that's what'll help me as some sort of filtering system or something like that. Yeah. There might already be something like that. That's the nice thing about an open platform is someone's probably thought of it already.
right, and that
So I've got a question for Dan. The Lemmie site, these headings here are just stories that you've put up there for people to read or to interact with. Is that how it works? Or
Yeah. So I in Leo, we usually we we get a whole bunch of news from our news feeds, and then we put up the stuff that we think is super interesting and kind of curate that sort of thing, so we can
Right.
put the links up there for the news articles that we think are pertinent to the the people we interact with. So yeah, and
Okay.
like if you got any comments, you can put a comment in there, or you can upvote just like Reddit, and so then yeah, things that are popular will show up. I mean, so here's where the AI, not AI necessarily, but here's where the algorithm can come into play with something like Lemmie, because you can look at things that are, they call them hot. So if they're upvoted a lot, you'll see all the things that have a lot of votes for them. And so that, that might be another way for someone like Eric trying to follow certain things. It's all
Right.
built in there already. So, Lemmie might make more sense. I don't know.
So it says you must log in or register to comment. So that's log in to Lemmie or register with
Yes.
Lemmie, is it?
So
Yeah.
you can
Okay. Yeah.
register on any site, just like Mastodon. It works the same way. You
Right.
find an instance that makes sense to you. You get registered, and then you can follow things on any Lemmie site. It doesn't have to be the one you're on necessarily.
Yeah.
And so then once you're logged into that, then you can make comments and stuff and all that. So
I have a question for the
It's
people who use Mastodon
mhm.
and the
Sure.
Fediverse. As I understand it now, they default to one this server by default. How do you feel about that? That there's one server by default, so in some ways that server
Uh,
becomes a way of
well,
decentralizing the service.
yeah, so you're saying when you use the app, right? Because in the app, it has the main Mastodon instance right there. But right below that, and it not as obvious, unfortunately, or maybe it is fortunate, I don't know, is the option to use any Mastodon instance and sign up. So you just have to scroll down a little bit. I guess it makes sense from the standpoint that um, the one that they present you with is sort of it's run by the creators of Mastodon. So they it's they think it's going to be a quality experience. You're right, it does drive people towards a central place, but you don't have to do that if you can read in, you're able to read into it a little bit.
Dan, is this the same content, the same stories that are being posted to Reddit?
Yeah,
Okay,
pretty much. Yeah.
because I've commented on a number
Yep.
of them, and Leo's commented back normally.
so now that you've mentioned Reddit, because I'm a big like when I'm trying to find for many years now, I'm searching on the internet for issues or problems with Linux or whatever. You do come across a lot of threads that I never join any of them. I just look through the threads. Now, the other day, I went to a Reddit thread and I couldn't read it. It said I had to join or something, which is that a first? Is that just changed?
No, that was part of their protest. So the subreddits, the people who moderate them are all volunteers. And if you think about it, Reddit makes all of their money off of ads that they stuff into pages that are being maintained and managed by community members, volunteers. So a lot of them have been using tools in order to moderate the content that help them to filter out racism and spam and hate speech and just all of the crap that might get posted. They use tools, and those tools use an API structure, an API call to do that. And Reddit, in an attempt, they say, to recover revenue, I really think it's more about the loss of revenue of not so much the API and supporting the APIs, but the customer that rather than coming to their website and seeing their advertisements and being in that like first class presentation of their content, that's what they consider their main site. They can use a viewer or a client that filters out all those things, but it also gives them different ways to sort things, and basically you can use Reddit without using Reddit, if that makes sense. And I don't think they like that. I think they realize that they're missing out on a lot of money.
Right.
But anyway, in protest to that, they raised the price of the API that basically made it impossible for these services to continue operating. There were kind of unbelievable figures thrown around, like it was going to cost this one developer $20 million to use the API, which that's a lot of money. I mean, he said he couldn't afford it, obviously, even though he does sell a paid client for, I believe it's like Mac, something like that. But anyway, so in protest to them raising the prices, the subreddits decided that they were going to lock themselves and become private. So the message you saw was, this subreddit is private, please contact the moderator, blah, blah, blah. They did that
Right.
to stop people who were coming in from searches to getting to the information, basically breaking the site. And there was a big row about it. Anyway, if you're more interested in finding out, it's actually kind of a neat thing that they all banded together. The CEO was really upset about it. Like, it's kind of a coup. Like, it's a neat, like,
Yeah, right.
David versus Goliath story. So anyway, that's what you saw.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it was interesting that there's one perspective. I don't remember where I heard this, what podcast, but where essentially Reddit is also profiting off of the work of volunteers.
Yeah, that's
and they're
yeah.
essentially hamstringing the volunteers in an effort to make more money, to squeeze a little tighter, and ultimately people slip off to Lemmie, or they end up losing more money because of in a way, a destruction of the platform. So
It is the business model of all social media. You make money off the users.
Yep.
You know what? In a larger sense, and I'm not going to take us there completely right now, but I'd love to have a discussion about this supposed Web 3.0 and what that means versus 2.0, which was all this interoperability and APIs and sort of a freedom and an openness of accessibility and information. And it's interesting to see companies like like Twitter and Reddit kind of squeezing that and saying, no, we're kind of done with this openness. You want it, you're going to pay for it. And I think that's sort of a death knell in a way for a lot of the way that the internet works today. Being able to embed things and have that data. So I think that's a interesting topic to kind of, what's next? Is everything going to be paid? Is the idea of a free and open internet changing?
That's
anyway.
a really good conversation, and the reason I think that is like the idea. This is years ago, where would you pay money to not have the advertising and the tracking,
Right.
And I think possibly, I mean, it depends, and then also, or I can pie hole it and I can block you. So it's almost like a little bit of a combative thing,
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Yep.
So the whole thing is that is a really good Eris. Write that down. But like in a way though,
I think there's.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think there's a lot of play here as well, because I think we've all taken for granted for so long now with the internet that so much of the services that we received, we pay nothing for, right? That's because there's been a lot of free-flowing money, free-flowing VC money, zero interest money, and that era, with a lot of what's gone on financially, of late in the last 6 to 12 months, is can't be sustainable, right? Where does that money come from? There might have been a few unicorns in the early days of the internet that made a huge bunch of money, and that's gone on to then fund some of the smaller startups, which we're now seeing are struggling. With Reddit, some of the numbers that I'd been hearing about, more so not necessarily with the whole API thing, but also I've been hearing about, I don't know if this is true or not, some of their internal financials, they weren't necessarily, even with advertising, that sustainable. So they had to do something, or the site was going to disappear anyway because they're just not making any money and their sources of funding were drying up. So I think we also need to think carefully about, you know, what are the things? Look at all the things that you're getting that you're paying nothing for, right? Where are those things going to end up if it continues?
Well, if you go back before the internet, though, I'll put a pretty simplistic approach on this.
In the before
If you go
times?
back before the internet, you bought encyclopedias, right? You bought encyclopedias, you put them on the thing, and then they're yours forever, and you can go through. But now we've got this constant internet payment to connect to the internet, right? So we're paying all the time. That was never a payment before that, right? So you had your encyclopedias sitting in your home if you wanted to buy them, right? Didn't have to buy them, or you could go to the library for free, right? Now we've got a subscription every month to connect to the internet. So are we paying them just for the service, or are they paying somebody else for that as part of the internet? I don't know how that works, but I mean, when you think about those things, and everything has gone to a subscription. Everything is going to a subscription. It's a constant payment for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So there's another added feature that we never had in the past, right? And
It's so
prices go up.
expensive. You start adding together all of these little, it's $9.99 a month, but how many of those are there? It is insane.
Colin, do you remember? So I remember I was a cord cutter before that was even a thing. And so I was using Netflix, and Netflix was DVDs, and like I was one of the first people who was getting streaming stuff, and they had a really tiny catalog. There was barely anything, but I was so excited because this is getting me away from cable. I remember when years ago, right around that point, someone saying, "You watch, they're going to break apart all of the channels into little fiefdoms." And then instead of everybody complaining about spending $100 a month for cable or whatever it is, we're all going to say, "Oh, thank goodness we have all these little services." And then, "Oh, wait a minute. Now we're paying probably just as not much, if not more, because of all these weird walled gardens." At least cable, we had sort of a single package. I mean, now you need services to keep track of what services you're subscribed to. Have you seen that? There's actually a service to track the services. Like, it's ridiculous, but it's true. I mean, so I pay for, they just raised the YouTube family, YouTube Red to, I pay like $26 or $27 a month, but that gives me free access to YouTube without ad blocking so that the creators I care about actually get something for my time, watching. That's the only soapbox one that I care about. I really think YouTube paying for it instead of blocking the ads. I know the ads are annoying, but that one I actually agree with. But anyway, and then, I have Hulu, and then I have, Paramount Plus, and you had Disney Plus. It's like all of a sudden, it's too much. It's too much, but it's what we wanted, right? Because we all hated cable. None of us wanted to pay for cable because it was too expensive. We never watched all the channels and blah, blah, blah. And now here we are in the same boat again. It's amazing how businesses are going to get their money. One way or another.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have cable. Sorry, go on, Brian.
I was just going to say, I get HBO Max just to watch one show, and then another show I have to have Paramount Plus. That's all I use it for.
Yeah,
it's the same thing as cable. You have to get the extended package because you want the one channel, and they know what they're doing.
Brian, is the show on Paramount Plus Picard?
Business.
Is that why I got it was for Picard?
No, that's not why, man. Man, I don't know. Maybe it was Beavis and Butthead.
So no, I was gonna say Strange New Worlds at least. I don't know.
I'm gonna give you a bit of a pro tip. The way you're supposed to do it is have that one show. So like, let's say there's a show on Paramount Plus you really want to watch, and maybe there's some other stuff on there you may care about. You have that for a month, and then the next month you switch to something else and watch that. And the next month you switch to something else. So you only have one service at a time.
Yeah, but it took me a while to catch on to that, but I canceled AMC because I was like, wait, Better Call Saul's over. I don't need this anymore. There's nothing on there I want.
Yeah.
Right.
I would love to see the stats on that, Adam, because I bet you there are a lot of people that do that, where it's just like, I'll catch up on this show this month and I can binge it, watch all of them.
Right.
And then
and people are squeezed for money now, and like that's the best. Like if you're gonna budget your entertainment thing, that's one of the best ways to clear up your budget is just
Yeah.
focus on one thing. Now I understand, families like having something like Disney Plus or something like that might be valuable to have for the kids or whatever, right? But like that's generally the idea is just have like that one, because like, oh, there's a new season of this. Well, just have it for that season, that month, and then or however long, and then move to something else. Like
We used to buy DVDs, right? Buy DVDs and then you've got it in your cupboard. You want to watch it again, you can watch it again.
right.
Hey, I'm cheap enough that I actually will go borrow movies from the library
Yeah, I'm all about
on
that.
DVD.
I'm all about
There
that.
you go.
Yep.
Yeah, I still frequently go in the like the bargain, like the bin of DVDs, and I like, oh, what have I not seen here? Oh, $5. That works for me.
I also check out games from the library, Switch games, PlayStation
Right.
games. Yeah.
Yeah, library's great, and you can do Hoopla. So a lot of libraries will
Yep.
do Hoopla, which is
Canopy, Hoopla, all those. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for
get
sure.
your library card, kids.
So
Get out your library card.
I'm gonna go check for Switch games. I had no idea. It's
Oh yeah,
amazing.
totally, dude. I had Bayonetta 3 was the last one I grabbed. Yeah.
Awesome.
that's fantastic.
I wonder if they've got the new Zelda game, or if I'm gonna have to
Maybe.
wait.
They had our library had like 3 copies of God of War Ragnarok like 2 days after it released. So
Wow.
Cool.
Yeah, I went to the library, and I for whatever reason there was a disconnect in my head. I think there are reasons for that, but I hadn't gone to the library for many years, and I went to the library and to get a library card again. This is probably about 10, 12 years ago, and this is what I'd like to rent a few books. And so like, no, it's free. I go, really? It's free? Like, I don't. This is, well, you pay for it in your taxes. I go, that's not very much, because I've seen that little line there. That's a very small amount. Anyway, so if you do have a library that you pay for with your property taxes, then
Yeah.
may as well use
And
it.
they do a lot with a little. Most places have nice libraries. We go for vacations, and we spend an afternoon, and wherever we are, go check out their libraries. That's
Oh, that's a
weird
really
we
good
are, but
idea. I never thought about
It
that.
is, and it's really cool because you see some neat architecture and some.
Uh-huh.
You find like a community. The library that they keep is a good indicator of, like, I don't know,
So
the community.
that's actually something that I've noticed is that the irony is that the nicer the area, the nicer the library, but also the less likely that community is going to use the library. Whereas like a lower class library, lower class area needs the library more, but there are no ones with less nice libraries.
Yeah. Yeah. It depends. Some libraries do a really good job of outreach and advertising and getting the message out there.
Right.
Um,
The key
and if
is to have like a system. So like here in Madison as well as down in Georgia, they have like library systems that span an area, and you can have libraries in one area send books or whatever to your local library.
Yeah, we have that.
Like that makes a big difference.
it does.
I don't know if you picked up on what you were saying, Eric, but I thought, the community does a really good job with their libraries. Like, oh, something that's community run, interesting, is a better experience than interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely something very, very interesting about the concept of a library, shared knowledge. Like you think of societal, benefits of being within a society, and like, all of the things that are controlled and cordoned off and like held back and all that. But a library is just such an open place, right? All those books, all that information is there for anyone.
Yeah.
If you live there, you can get a library card.
Are those books GPL?
Yeah. No, they're copyright, not copyleft.
So yeah, libraries are kind of weird. Not weird in a good way, but just very interesting as a concept within, a society to have this house of knowledge,
Yeah.
Well,
cool.
I apologize if I steered the ship in the direction of a library conversation anyway.
No, I would say I'm pretty well to do myself, but I go to the library with my kids. I don't see why.
yeah.
Because we get books there.
I haven't been for a long time.
Yeah, there's a lot. Like if you have kids, there's a lot of reasons to go to a library. I mean, it's more than just books, but they have like they have like a really cool little reading area too. They have I have a lot of books, but they get bored of the books I have, and so we go to the library. We check out some books. We had some papers to write in the springtime, for school.
Yeah.
We checked out a lot of books for that, and I kept going back because we need more books or need to check, recheck them out. And so I think there's a lot of value in libraries. So
Yeah, and they do a really good job with all the ages of kids too. So they have young kids area where it's a play area and with a little bit of reading, and then it's sort of middle schoolers and but then they have teenager areas too, which I think is pretty cool with big bean bags and they're trying really hard to sort of make it a welcoming environment.
Yeah, that's not the
Great
library I
for
remember
remote
from my.
workers too.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, if you want to work remote and
You
not
work
be in the
remote,
house.
but you don't. Yeah, you want to get away from the house for a bit. Great place to go.
And the people at the coffee shop are starting to give you the eyeball every time you come in.
Yeah, because you keep bringing in your desktop computer and yeah.
Coffee shops around here, they don't even have it inside. You'd be sitting outside with a laptop. You wouldn't be able to see it.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
When I had Comcast, that's what I had to do. No kidding. Often enough it was down and it's well, heading to the coffee shop. And I wouldn't even go in. I just sit in my car.
Well, that was fun. I really liked how that conversation snaked from Dan building something cool to the library. I don't know how we ended up there now.
Yeah.
When I watch it back, I'll figure it out, and I probably still won't understand how we got there. But
It's like a diagram.
It's the taking it. I think Vince mentioned we take the internet for granted, but there are other ways of getting your information if you want.
Right.
But I don't know how does the internet work? You got internet providers. They obviously buy chunks of the internet, maybe cheap. You pay for that. But I've had a domain, and they keep asking me for money. This domain seems to be a big rort to me. They're just I'm no longer going to pay for a .com.au just because it's a .com.au. I don't use the website hardly anymore, so what's the point of me paying for a domain? But I think at one point they automatically took the money out of I think a couple of years ago, they automatically took the money out. So the internet, it costs a lot of money, doesn't it, to have a domain and all these. This is why a lot of these developers need funding, because to put their web page out there and all these things in the background costs money.
I'm gonna let you know an uncomfortable little piece of information that the vast majority of the public internet you access is AWS. It's Amazon Web Services.
Yeah.
Your
AWS has done a ton of work to build backbones of its own, CDN networks of its own, networks of its own, that oftentimes the route to AWS is from your ISP to a local AWS endpoint, and everything you do from there is on Amazon. It's almost basically that there's a second internet that's just Amazon.
Yeah, and you have other providers too. I mean, you know when someone goes down because a whole chunk of stuff stops working.
Like Azure and GCP are huge cloud providers, but they're nobody's anywhere near as big as Amazon. It's really
especially for infrastructure and backend, but for services, someone like Cloudflare, they go down and all of a sudden it's okay, something's going on. They go to down detector and see what's up. But
when you have a little outage and a whole swath of a country is down. It's that one provider provides that much stuff.
One of my favorites was it was probably a few years ago, but I want to say it was Verizon. One of their local offices, someone changed a rule in one of their routers, and it propagated, and all the traffic started to come to that one router. I don't know if you remember this, but that was the cause of the outage. One dude somewhere in a closet typed in the wrong he's probably at his desk, but with SSH or whatever, but typed in the wrong code into the router, and because of the way the internet trusts these configurations, it passed it around.
BGP is a harsh mistress. Yeah,
it is. And you better believe that guy was having a bad day, man.
quick, change it back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can't change it fast enough.
No. Yeah, no, you really can't. You have to.
And I remember that being a big deal, because they were talking about should we? Because this is such an easy way to destroy the network. Should we really allow this? And I know they did make some changes in terms of whether they trust a certain thing. And, if, especially for something that was a small, like it was a very, very small regional office that couldn't handle the traffic. So that it should have never been allowed to happen. But anyway, I dug too deep in that one, but it basically the idea that, we have this huge interconnected network, and that's all the internet is a bunch of smaller networks connected together. And it's really, kind of, if you know what you're looking at and you kind of look at how this stuff works and it's connected together, like there's a lot of ways that it could fail miserably pretty quickly. And when it does, there's so many things that rely on it now, right? You talk about calling, like paying for the internet. And I remember the days of paying for internet, for dial-up, and then ISDN, and then, sort of all the progressions, cable modem. And but back then it was just, you went to your computer, you turned it on, you did something, and you left, right? It wasn't pervasive. Now it's a utility, right? It's like electricity and water. Like so many of the things in my house run off of that. All of my entertainment, all of my communication, everything, that's electronic basically expects that to be there. And companies, like you're saying, yeah, they provide you a service by letting you connect. That's really what they're doing, is they're providing the endpoint at your house and then the infrastructure for your signal, so to speak, to get out to the wider network.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're renting you an amount of that bandwidth. So, but, they used to treat it, and that's me going to the coffee shop because Comcast would do maintenance in the middle of the day because, everybody who uses the internet's at work, right? I was at home working. I needed the internet to work, but they didn't see it that way, right? I'd call and complain, and they'd be like, well, you need a business connection then. I'm like, well, it's 5 times as expensive for half the speed. I'm not going to do that. So
yeah,
anyway,
going from $100 to $1,000 a month.
Yeah, exactly. And
to get that dedicated IP though, static IP, it's worth it, right?
And a good upload speed.
Yeah.
I remember considering getting like a half T1 in my house back when that was like the fastest connection you could get, was a dedicated, telecom line. Our whole office with hundreds of people had a full T1 connection. I remember almost getting a half T at home. Like, this is primitive days compared to what we have now. But anyway, the point being that I think that for a lot of people, maybe not everybody, maybe we're a little bit different, but for a lot of people, the internet isn't like a nicety anymore. It's not would like to have it. We need it, for a lot of the things in our lives. And the companies don't really treat it that way in a lot of senses. I mean, there's been the Broadband Act to make sure that most people can have access, because if you can't get access to fast internet, that really limits your choices in terms of employment and things like that. So there have been attempts to do that, and a lot of the companies receive substantial subsidies for the equipment and the lines and all of the work that they do, plus all the subscriber fees and everything else. So I don't think it'll ever be as good as it should be, but I do think they need to take it more seriously. And I do often wish that I lived in the UK because of the way their system works and the competition that exists there. It's virtually a monopoly pretty much everywhere here in the US. You have one provider, maybe 2 if you're lucky. So
yeah. Well,
anyway,
that was cool, and I think we should probably move on to the straw poll. So if you haven't done the straw poll, you got just a few moments to knock it out before Eris goes ahead and reads it off. So Eris, how did that straw poll turn out?
Let me refresh one last time. So the question is, if you had to choose which is more desired for a laptop, easy to replace parts, modular, but everything is made to run Windows, it has 53%, and made to run Linux, everything is supported, but soldered on is status quo and screws are myth, 47%. So pretty close.
Now, when I voted, the easy to replace parts was in the minority, so it must have shifted just a little bit ago.
I was surprised by that. I saw that too. When I first voted, it was more people had voted for, manufactured for Linux, but soldered components. And I thought, that's really odd. I chose the other one, designed for Windows. And there are very few laptops I've used. I mean, mine has a fingerprint reader that doesn't work, but otherwise, that laptop works perfectly. All of the ones before it, depending on how new the hardware is, maybe you'd have a problem, but there aren't many components. I mean, even when I buy just a random thing on Amazon or eBay, I struggle to think of the last thing that I plugged into Linux and it just didn't work. So when I saw the poll and it was like, oh, I'd rather have it work for Linux, but soldered components, I thought, but what if you ever wanted to upgrade memory or storage and everybody loves old ThinkPads. Like all of that seemed very contrary to me. I expected it to be everybody with replaceable, serviceable parts and maybe a few people, but that's a really interesting stat. It really is.
Yeah. I was for the replaceable parts, and then I saw it the other way when I voted, but it got me to thinking.
You did?
Yeah. So I voted for replaceable parts. Like I don't want soldered on anything. Otherwise, it's a no-go.
You did it. I thought you meant that you meant to vote for soldered on parts.
No. I'm like when I voted, soldered on but ready to run Linux was winning.
Okay.
So the winner now is replaceable parts. But I thought about like, wow, that surprises me. But at the same time, in many ways, computers are almost at a point now where, I mean, how much more power do you really need? I mean, how fast can you type, I suppose? I mean, there's, in a way, it seems like, I can get a 4th gen, i7, and that still browses the internet fine. I have no problems with a 4th gen, i7, which is, 9 years old now, and that's still a very, fine CPU. I mean, it's a little more power hungry, but now we're at the point, I mean, 10 years from now, is the internet going to be so inefficient that it's going to not be able to do the things that we need to do?
We were just talking about it, man. They're going to have 8 times as many ads. Come on.
Oh, good point. To pay for everything, yeah.
You need a couple hours for that.
I went with the soldered on, by the way. I feel like I'm the dissenter here. Is there anyone else here?
So did I, actually.
I chose soldered on. Realistically, I don't think it matters either way, because on one hand, I really don't replace the parts in my laptops. I mean, I could, and it'd be nice to be able to, but on the other hand, I've had laptops that the Wi-Fi doesn't work out of the box. And maybe that was 15 years ago, but
yeah,
it's still, it's a toss up to me.
So it's just like with game consoles to me. I don't upgrade a game console until another one comes out, right? But just because I get a new game console doesn't immediately obviate the need for the other one. And like if I got a new computer that did the same things but faster, and maybe someone else could use that computer. Maybe I could then donate it to the library for them to then give on. Like there are ways to keep things in circulation without necessarily just tinkering with them, right?
To squeeze every last possible bit out of it. Don't you understand? You have to use it until it becomes completely impractical to do so.
Yeah, no, I get you.
No, I mean, the only thing with soldered on, especially for a computer, like a laptop, like my tablets, my phones, any kind of solid state device, of course, I don't ever expect to do anything with it when it gets old. And all old means, to Nate's point, is that you have to wait a little longer, right? It's a little slower. It still works in most cases, like unless on like Android, when they stop supporting it, if my wife will keep a phone way too long, and then she'll be like, why isn't this app working? Or why can't I get this app? And it's like, well, because they stopped supporting Android 6 or whatever, you're using. So that's one way it can be obsolete. But to Nate's point, I've had very few laptops where I've felt like the processor was the problem. But I will have laptops where I run out of memory, because modern applications expect, a lot more memory, right? So I just took my Dell I replaced the keyboard finally, and that went well. So I figured I didn't break the guts of it by replacing the keyboard. So now I'll upgrade the memory since and the reason I needed to wasn't necessarily because it didn't run well. It was because I'm using a lot of containers and virtual machines and, stuff that just expects to have memory. And if you got 5 or 6 of those running, like 16 gigs used to sound like a lot.
Yeah.
I think of 16 gigs like that's so much memory, right? But it's not anymore.
But I think you're coming at it from the expectation that has always been a thing. You said phones, tablets, and things you don't really think about.
Right.
That's because that's never been the expectation of those devices.
Correct.
So
Plus, I would never use them in that way either. They're not a computer. They're not.
Right.
Like I'm not going to expect it to have.
But if computers were like a device like that, you wouldn't have the expectation of upgrading.
Well, they're trying. Talk to me in 2 years when all of these distros. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
That's where we're going, right?
I got you.
For at least part of it, and I think that's going to be an interesting day where we have a machine that's built for Linux, soldered on everything. Who cares? No one's ever going to want to upgrade it, and it becomes just like a phone or a tablet. That's a really cool idea, and I wonder how it's going to work.
It's called a Chromebook.
Well.
Yeah, kind of.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, so the idea of an immutable atomic distro can get us there. And I don't know that it's going to work for me in what I do with the computer, but I think for most people, it's going to be a really cool idea.
You better get on board.
Most people love their phones. Most people love their tablets. And if you can get a computer to work like that, awesome, right?
It's called MacBooks.
I was going to say it's called an Ubuntu all snap.
Oh yeah,
Ubuntu all snap.
Yeah, oops, all snaps. Yeah, right. Got my Captain Crunch. Oops, all snaps.
I did want to mention the reply that I get. I got one reply for the poll, and it's as follows: easy to replace parts, modular, but everything is made to run Windows. Replaceable and serviceable parts have become more phased out over time. I'd rather have that back, and simply because certain components were made to run Windows doesn't mean they can't function in a Linux environment. Maybe not as well, but that's a trade-off that I'm willing to make.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I want to, say the same thing. Like, I mean, even though it's made to run Windows, that doesn't mean that Linux won't work. I mean, we've operated in that sort of mindset for a long time. I mean, how long until laptops and computers actually got made for Linux did we just install Linux and make it work? So
yeah,
I don't think that's going away either. So I mean, it almost doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter. You can still run it.
Sorry, Dan, I can't hear you over my working fingerprint reader. Sorry.
Well, but that doesn't mean it doesn't function, right? And it doesn't mean it doesn't function well. And for little niche things like that are kind of proprietary, I guess, in a way, that might not. But there are a lot of, so you say that, but there are a lot of fingerprint readers that do work well, and people make them go. So I mean, it's not everything.
And if I really cared enough, and this is why open source works, if I really cared enough, I could probably get it to work, right? Either there's something that's close enough out there, or heck, maybe I could even throw my hand in and, try, creating something. I don't know. I don't care enough. I really don't. I never used it in Windows, honestly.
Right.
So it wasn't a loss to me. And I would still argue that even though we do have good options today for buying a Linux laptop, that most people still will buy Windows hardware and just use Linux on it. Because that's, like you said, Dan, that's the way it's always sort of been. The joke of getting Linux to run on everything, a toaster, right? Mm-hmm. That's adaptability. The fact that the M1 was out for, a month, 2 months, and here we go. It may not be perfect, but we're at least, and that's that conquering new territory, I think is so appealing to a certain segment of the Linux developer community.
So, are you saying Linux is like the Borg because it assimilates everything?
Yeah, it is. It is. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
So are we the baddies?
My inspiration for selecting to be able to replace parts means that it comes with a Windows installed. and that is the best part of installing Linux, is nuking Windows off the device.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not wrong.
It's like
Yeah.
peeling the plastic wrap, but digitally.
And honestly, and I know not everybody's a nerd and that's going to get into it, but I love knowing that so many hobbyists started by discovering Linux and realizing that they've had this Windows computer for all these years and they can do something else with it. And they can figure out how to get it onto a disk or on a thumb drive, and they boot it up in a live session. It's like this whole different world. And I love the fact that really non-IT people, not non-technical, but non-IT people aren't doing it to make a living, have this interest and are able to do it because of the way Linux functions and can run on this hardware that really wasn't intended for it. But hey, it probably runs better than what you're already running on.
Just think of how many Linux things, both hardware and software, that are really just like somebody said, hey, this doesn't work here. And someone's like, yeah, we'll see. Like that's really like a driving force in so much support, right? Whether it's, oh, this game doesn't work. Yeah, we'll see. Oh, I can't get this to work. I'll try that. Like it's sort of that weird contrarian rebel attitude that Linux users tend to have, that they're just like, oh, you said I can't do this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me in a week or two.
Right. That's the best reason I can think of to do it, because you said I couldn't. Yeah, I know.
So it makes me think, the framework being a completely replaceable machine,
yeah,
that has the same kind of sleek profile as any other modern computer, that to me has the potential to be a disruptor in the direction that a lot of hardware is going. So I wonder if, I wonder if this is just like a flash in the pan. In a few years, framework is not going to make it because they're going to be squeezed out by margins, or if they're going to be able to hold their own for an extended period of time and maybe even change the industry. I don't know. It seems like it could go any way at this point.
I think the merit is there. I mean, I don't think they have any competition in the sense of modularity. And I mean, I know that their sell is that it's upgradable, but I think it's really more than that. I think it's customizable. And I think for a lot of people, especially technical people, the ability to, like, I love that demonstration where they showed you can put the numpad in or take it out or put it on the other side or put the touchpad here. And like, just the way that you could customize that, I don't think there's any competition for that. There probably will be for very long, and they have to weather that tide, right? That's going to happen. You innovate, and China being the way it is and not following intellectual property laws, and somebody's going to try to rip it off. But I think if they are able to manage their finances properly and not overreach, not extend themselves, that they have something that is unique enough and valuable enough that they don't have to be the next Dell to be. I mean, look at System 76. That's not a very big company, and they do some pretty amazing things, especially from a manufacturing standpoint, because of things like you've seen, Nate, with the way that the technologies have made it so that you can produce smaller batches without it needing to be this monolithic thing. You can almost custom order things. If they're, I mean, I thought, I agree with you. I thought maybe it was just going to be a gimmick, but because they've been able to actually deliver a compelling product that someone will scrutinize, that I trust and have been watching for years, let's say, and they actually think it's an interesting thing and show all these different capabilities, and the fact that you can run the board out of the machine. There's so many cool things that you can do with their parts, let alone the whole machines. And anyway, yeah, I think it's a really cool company, and they've done some very interesting things to a point where I've always bought Dells, or been very sort of faithful to that, but I'm genuinely considering getting one next time. I don't know that I'll ever upgrade the processor. Yeah, you were talking about it. I was going to bring it up and I forgot that you had mentioned it. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, you said what? That you were thinking maybe of upgrading your daughter's system.
That's what I'm going to do with
that.
it. So,
okay.
Don't mean this disparagingly against Leo, because I know Leo really loves his ARM-based systems. but I am going to rip that Pi 4, not nicely. Actually, I'll gently remove it. That Pi 4 out of that machine because it just has no good power management anything for it. So I'm going to put the framework with a battery, and then I'll just reroute everything to the different USB-C ports that are on here, and then it's actually going to be very simple. I've already tested the concept out of what I want to do, and it's going to work. So I got to fix my 3D printer again first because I want to put a nice mounting bracket, and I got to do something for work here that involves Raspberry Pis first too. So anyway,
Leo has a framework though, right?
yeah, Leo actually has a framework.
Yeah, he
See,
does.
if it's good enough for him, it's almost good enough for me. So
Oh,
No, there you go. That's
No.
high praise.
Well, the thing is, like, I ordered my framework. I pre-ordered it back in April, and then I have not received it yet. And it's supposed to be come in June. I was hoping I'd get it, by now, because it's we're past the halfway point in June. So I just decided I'd order some parts and build my own framework.
What processor's in that?
That's an 11th gen i5. So it'll be
That's going to be a heck of an upgrade for her.
yeah. So that's actually that was the least expensive unit I could buy for it because she's not gonna really need it, and it's my laptop that I use, my regular like on the go laptop. It's actually 50% faster than that, which is a 10th gen i5, and so I'm like, well, my daughter's 3D printed jalopy is going to be a screaming machine even compared to my laptop, which I think is pretty funny. So anyway.
Yeah.
I know they have like AMD stuff, but I'm waiting for their Cyrix boards to come out. I want those.
Cyrix might be too cool for you. I mean,
I'm a wait. I'm
Yeah.
waiting.
you might
I
be
got
waiting a
nothing but
while.
time.
Yeah. Remember when Cyrix
Oh
was
my
the
goodness.
thing back in the Pentium days?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was cool. Was it Quake that killed Cyrix basically? I can't remember. There's a good.
I think so. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, awesome. Thank you very much, Eris, for your straw poll. If you have any straw poll suggestions, please send them to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com or to Eris, or tag any of us in any of the the chat thingies that are out there. But I like email. When email's working. So, and that's Federated, and that's been working for a long time. Think about that. Federated. Well, I'd like to get into the news, and Ulfnick, you proposed something like 2 or 3 weeks ago now, maybe a month, maybe it's been 6 weeks. I don't know, but I've been carrying it over from show notes to show notes to talk about. So before we get into something else, I'd like to get into this. So there's a simple remote support, and this is from Magnus, either Jorgensen or Jorgensen, depending on where you're from, I suppose. And I don't know if you wanted to. Did he just leave me as I'm talking to him? He did. That's all right. He'll probably come back. So Magnus Jorgensen from Tux Digital Community open sourced a FOSS web app named Simple Remote Support that you can self-host. In his forum post, he said that he realized that there was a lack of remote support options for Linux, and he decided to open source a project that he made a while ago. So there have been 100 commits in the last month and a half, but it's still in an alpha stage. So he's looking for feedback. So right now there's a voice, video, and desktop share, chat, and file transfer plan, but those are very complicated to integrate with GUI, so that it may take a bit. So there's a live demo that you can see, and you can give him direct feedback on the Linux Saloon Telegram or in the Tux Digital forum. So anyway, I thought that was super cool. I don't know if that works with Wayland though. If that's a anyway, I thought that was really cool because we talked about just simple remote support before. And if you can host your own, I wonder, maybe like on if you set up like a Tailscale, using Tailscale to cluster your machines together and then host it on your own, like in your lab or whatever. That seems like a pretty sweet way to do that. Any thoughts on that?
I just started using Tailscale just as a quick aside to play around, and I'm amazed at how good the quality of the connection is. And I have a symmetrical 250 connection, so I'm getting an excellent up and down speeds.
That's
And
awesome.
I know that makes a huge difference.
I can drool over that.
But I'll tell you what, Tailscale from here on my home network to the clinic where I go for medical stuff, who does not have a good Wi-Fi network. It's very, very laggy, but I've been able to be on the remote desktop of my local desktop here from my laptop, and it is really fast. I mean, it's hard to tell that I'm not on the same network. So yeah, Tailscale has really sort of blown my socks off. Like it's so easy. There's no configuration. The DNS works. Like, yeah, good stuff. So I can imagine, somehow being able to use that. I don't know how you do it. I don't know enough about it to know if you could have someone just temporarily add a machine. Although I guess if
you can share machines through Tailscale, so you can like
Okay.
share it with somebody. There's also there are like expirations you can set if
Okay.
that's what you're asking about as well.
Well, I'm just wondering, so if someone needed tech support and you said, okay, I'm going to connect to your machine here, go, go to this address and, well, so from a top level, like the idea that someone's providing a simple, free way to do this is wonderful, because remote desktop software is one of those, I don't know how they've done it, but they've sort of, it's like a cabal. Like they've got control of the software, and some of it is outlandishly expensive. I mean, literally thousands of dollars a year for a license for some of these packages. And it's just like, haven't we figured this out a long time ago? Like, why is this so bad, either from a free standpoint, or why is it so expensive? And the tools all exist. So I'm really happy to see that he's doing this. I'll definitely try it out and give him some feedback to see how it works. I mean, I don't know if anyone else has had to provide remote support
I
for
have.
people, but
Yeah.
it's difficult. Like it's hard to. I'm trying to think, like through the years, like I've been through so many of them where either they
TeamViewer
didn't last or.
TeamViewer
What's
was
nice is
my jam until they I got I would help basically the same lady out. That was it. Periodically, and I'd occasionally use it on my own systems, and then all of a sudden I got flagged by TeamViewer that I was using it commercially, and I couldn't use it anymore. I'm like, well, that was kind of a jerk move. All right, I'm done with you guys.
so I know it doesn't apply to this crowd, but my Windows actually has this thing called Quick Assist built into it. I think it started in Windows 10, possibly 8. Windows 11 definitely has it. And it's basically that where you give somebody this same way as TeamViewer, right? You maybe call them on the phone or something and give them the code, and you can either view their machine remotely or control it, and it's all built into Windows. So if you're going from a Windows to a Windows machine, that's actually integrated into the operating system. No need for the extra software and stuff. But having that cross-platform option, yeah, that's a bit of a scam.
And as easy for it to be as easy as just going to a web page. Most of them, and I have to see how this works, but a lot of them you still have to download something and run it and acknowledge it, and there's usually a whole bunch of steps just to get to that point.
That's for the KVM, I think, because if you want keyboard and mouse remote control, then you're going to need software.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I think this is great that he's pursuing it. I think it's very worthwhile, and I'll definitely take a look. I mean, I don't know if maybe this is specialized enough that a lot of people aren't doing remote stuff like this, but
Yeah, I think I did test it out, and I tried installing on a server. I didn't get quite to the point where I got it to run because it is still a developing project. But as far as what he said so far on the forum and the Telegram, he's looking for feedback. So right now there is a live website that you can go to where you can check it out, and I'll just post that in YouTube right now so everybody has it. There you go. So you can use that right now and go start a call with other people. He has a GitLab up for it, which will be in the show notes. And when it's in, when it comes on a bit along a bit further, you'll be able to deploy it yourself with relative ease. I think he's done 100 commits in the last month and a half. So, I mean, it's really rolling. But again, it's still in alpha stage. So he's looking for feedback. I think chat and file transfer planned, but those are
Mhm.
pretty complicated to integrate into a GUI. So
Yeah, I
it's going to
see
be a
that
while
he
longer
has
before that's
he
in.
has tabs for it, chat and file. I was just looking at it, and they're just
Yeah.
placeholders. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we have like these tools, then how will I practice my NATO phonetic alphabet over the phone when I'm trying to spell out a complex
Yeah.
command, right?
No, right.
Bravo, Charlie,
Yeah.
Frank,
Sierra,
Mark.
Uniform, Delta, Oscar, space.
I'm going to put a QR code in front of the camera, and I want you to scan it with your phone and then
Right,
use
yeah.
your phone as a reference to type it into the keyboard.
Pretty
Oh my
much.
goodness!
It's
I have
actually
a
not a bad
customer
idea,
that
but yeah.
I have a new customer who convinced they're so convinced that they need a QR code. I'm like, for what? Oh, I don't know. I just know I need one. I'm like, okay, we'll get you a QR code. Don't you worry.
For the business card.
I guess, it's they don't know why, but they've heard that word.
So what
and
you
they
got to
know
do
that
is you provide them a QR code to your services, and they don't know any different. So then when they pass their card around, people get your services.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
It's a service you're only too happy to provide.
100%.
Also, I
Yeah.
just wanted to say generally, if you're working on your own FOSS project, it is hard, especially in the beginning, because a lot of help comes with visibility. And, for Magnus, right, this is just the beginning, but this goes for any FOSS project. And you also need to balance it against things that actually, pay you money. So that may look like doing commits a few weeks on, a few weeks off. I think that's the case for Magnus at the moment. He's given it as much as he can, but there's only so many hours in a day.
Yeah.
But the Linux Saloon and with Linux Saloon and Tux Digital, these are lovely places to share what you're working on, and I think that's why Magnus shared it with the community, because everybody's very friendly. And you have every kind of person, from people who might know a lot about what you're trying to do, and I have seen them get help on pretty technical things, the people who just like testing UIs, or they might have recommendations for the README or whatever. And if nothing else, you're among people who are like-minded individuals who just want you to succeed, and that means a lot. So don't be shy about it. Just say, here's my project, and keep pushing forward till you get there. Yeah, people will be rooting for you. So don't hesitate, post it, and yeah, we can all help each other that way.
I think I'll do a merge request that requires chat to be in all caps.
So he was
There you
working
go.
back on something. Yeah, 2019. Magnus was working on something called Folk Finder, and I'm trying to remember. I don't even remember what it was. And I was testing it with him. God, my memory's so bad. I apologize, Magnus, if you see this. But anyway, he was testing something back then, same kind of deal. Like he was developing it and wanted people to use it and give him feedback. And I went through a couple cycles with him on it. And anyway, yeah, I think that's really cool and very smart of him to reach out to a community that's going to be hopefully kind of understanding. And
It's been great so far. I mean, people just hop in. He talks about it in chat, and people just hop onto the program and give him feedback right there and then. He posted it on the forum too. Yeah, just people are ready and willing to help. So it's lovely to see.
So something you mentioned, Eric, was about Tailscale. There's actually to give a little shout out to whoever makes it. There is a self-hosted version of Tailscale called Headscale. I've never tested it, but supposedly it's all right. So if you're one of those folks who don't like the idea of your traffic, even though it's encrypted or whatever, routing through Tailscale themselves, or if you're just a self-hosting kind of person, that's an option too.
you said Headscale. There was another one I thought. I'm looking. I'm one of those weirdos that keeps a bunch of bookmarks. I'll find it, but I know there was another thing alternative to Tailscale. I didn't think it was called Headscale, but it
I
looked
think
like
I
it
know
was.
what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name either.
I'll see if I can find it anyway. But yeah, just the idea that it is at sort of zero config. And Tailscale, I mean, I don't, for those of you that haven't tried it, like I had never heard of it, and I read about it and I was like, wow, this sounds amazing. So I went, and of course I always check with Adam anytime I find anything new, because he's usually 10 steps ahead of me. And so I'm like, have you tried Tailscale? He's like, oh yeah, I use it all the time. So then I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to try it. And
Yeah,
so
I'd used it for like a year and a half at that point. Yeah, I was like,
right.
yep, all the time.
Yeah. So, but like even on Linux, it's that easy. Like on any platform, like a mobile device, your computer, you install it, you turn it on if you have to. Like in the Linux case, it's a service that you start basically, and that's it. Like you sign in, and there's your computers. Like everything's there, and all of the DNS, so your host name and like everything just works. It's incredible. And like, so I was using Moonlight that I talked about last time, the game streaming software that I was using as remote desktop. Yeah, and like I said, I'm on a guest Wi-Fi network, and it's so low latency, and the image quality, like it's just really impressive between a low latency remote desktop client and a low latency zero config sort of VPN, point-to-point VPN.
So there's a Unraid server that I left behind when I moved from Atlanta. It's actually at my folks' house, and it has a bunch of services that I won't mention, but that it's back there, and I actually have a Tailscale container running on there, and that's how I connect back to that machine. So when my folks say, hey, like we're having trouble accessing this or that, it's like I can do that from here. I can do it from my phone. I can do it because it's all on my Tailscale network. And so I had briefly hosted a Minecraft server for my nephew and like a couple of his friends, and it was just a matter of adding them, like sharing the machine with their Tailscale accounts. And so like they could connect to it. I didn't have to route it through, some kind of game service or any of that. It was just hosted on that same server. So yeah, Tailscale's incredible.
So how does Tailscale make their money if they're giving away the service for free, though? I mean, at what point do you have to pay for it?
They do have so they limit you on the
Yeah.
the number of machines and some other stuff, the number of users as well that they charge you for. So if you start to use it as like a sort of a team kind of thing, like in an organization, that's when you're probably gonna start getting charged, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and they really do gear it towards larger company type,
right.
business oriented things, because they
It's
let
the
you
zero
use
trust thing. Yeah.
the zero trust thing, but like their authentication stuff is like OAuth, so they're kind of gear it towards Microsoft or Google authentication. So I mean, it's kind of made for the corporate team type thing.
So
Yeah.
their pricing and their tiers, the free tier, it's up to 3 users, up to 100 devices, peer-to-peer connections, access control list for network and resource level access policies, magic DNS, which is amazing. It is magic. SSO and standard IDP, user approval. But then you jump up to starter, which is only $6 per active user per month, which is pretty affordable. Unlimited users, devices 100 plus 10 per user, limited ACLs, ACL tags, auth keys. You start to get into where you can control access and do different things, configuration and logic and logging, and then $18 a month for premium, and then enterprise is a custom. So I'm sure they're making their money off of the services, and the free is really just a come on. If I'm, Nate, someone like in your position who's can make a purchasing decision about technology, like if you can get on the free plan and see how cool that is. I don't know if Nate's still there.
It's pretty
Yeah, he is.
awesome.
He's
Yeah.
back.
Oh, he is.
You could use that, see how amazing it is, and be like, oh, okay, I think we can use this. So
Yeah.
that's really good advertising. And also I think it fosters a lot of goodwill, and we're talking about it, right? Because we can use it and it doesn't cost us anything. So companies who do this, I think they're pretty savvy. They're pretty smart in that, like, give it, and
Some
don't make
are.
it so limited that it's
Yeah.
like give a decent, generous amount of functionality and
Yep.
anyway.
And then you get all the people that are like us that have played with it. So when you get into a position where you can make that decision, you're like, oh, I know what the tool.
Right. Yeah. somebody at work's like, hey, does anybody know a solution for this? I got you, fam. Yeah, you're just
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there.
Yep.
I got
Yeah,
you,
it's
fam.
pretty. Look, man, I have a 3 in front of my age. Okay, I'm allowed to say things like that.
It's true. It's true.
I have to play with it again. I only started playing with it, and I didn't like see a need for it initially. But I think now that I'm away from my home a little bit more,
Yep.
I see that there's maybe time to revisit that. Assuming
I
it's
think
not
with-
blocked by some sort of firewall rule where I work.
Yeah, maybe.
So that's
But
actually the incredible thing. It will actually do NAT and firewall traversal, because I've actually used it at work to connect to things outside of work.
Oh, really?
And it just uses WireGuard to traverse the firewall.
Interesting.
There's
So
just
unless-
UDP
so unless there's-
packets.
Unless they're specifically targeting that, I guess, then there's that one thing. But yeah, I've never had any issue with traversing corporate firewalls with Tailscale.
Yeah, it'll go through the carrier
Good to know.
grade NAT stuff too. So
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that it can burrow through that pretty much makes it.
And it's
pretty
using
resilient.
WireGuard on both ends,
Yeah.
so it's encrypted the whole way.
Mhm.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
Tailscale does is broker your connection basically, and then after that you're connected directly. There's nothing Tailscale does.
Yep.
That's interesting.
I have a strong suspicion that it'll work for you at work, Nate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
I
Yeah.
think it's interesting how you have an insight to how that works over there.
They also have an interesting thing. They also have an interesting thing called a subnet router that you can set up with Tailscale. So it basically allows you to VPN into your network through your Tailscale subnet router rather than directly to the machine. So if there are things on your network that you don't necessarily want to put as a Tailscale node, or maybe can't, like a printer or whatever it might be,
Mhm.
maybe some kind of appliance, you can set up a Tailscale node on one of your machines as a subnet router, and you can pass in that subnet to your Tailscale. So you can still connect to your devices through that.
Do
So
you
like,
know
Mhm.
when you set up Tailscale, I guess on the back end it's using WireGuard. So is there an additional IP address that's assigned to each device?
Yeah, they have their
Yeah.
own peer. They have their own peer address.
So
but
does broadcast traffic, do you know if that would go over the connection? And what I'm thinking here is if you have, like, say at 2 different locations, 2 people playing Minecraft and one of them opens it up to the LAN, are those broadcast packets going to make it to the other machine on the other side?
I don't know. I'm not sure if that's I'm not sure how that is on the subnet router side, because obviously if the machines are directly connected in the Tailscale network, then they could connect to each other via the Tailscale network itself. But as far as the subnet router part, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm
We'll
not
play
sure
with
about
it.
that
I wanna
either. But
find out.
Yeah.
I do know things on your tailnet. Obviously,
Yeah,
they
those will.
you can
Yeah.
do broadcast stuff to that, but I don't know about the subnet thing
The-
either.
The 2 things I see on mine are so the subnet routes that Adam just described, connecting machines you can't install Tailscale on. And then there's also an exit node, which you allow your network to route internet traffic through this machine. So you can
Yeah.
set up those 2 things, at least on the free tier. And it looks like those are pretty easy to configure. There might be more advanced things that.
Next week is an application appetizer, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I think
I
we
just-
just did it.
Yeah, I mean, for the basic stuff that I've done, so it's not a traditional, it's WireGuard, but it's not a traditional VPN where you're actually using it to route through. Although with that exit node thing, I wonder like what kind of stuff you could do. But anyway, like it's really
WireGuard do crazy stuff.
WireGuard's amazing. I'm using, even on my just regular VPN provider, I'm using WireGuard just because, unless it's getting blocked, because some places do block it. But yeah, like yeah, Tailscale, I mean, just using it from just installing it and just having the connectivity with the Magic DNS component, that in and of itself, just with doing nothing else, is really impressive. And it isn't like they're saying, like it's just really brokering the connection, and then the traffic is not really routing through them. It's really, really impressive stuff. So, actually the other thing is the fact that you can have it on literally everything. My iPad, my Android phone, my Linux computers, Windows, Mac, whatever you got, it'll run on, and do this overlay network thing. Pretty cool. The only conflict I had is I had a local entry for one of my machines in hosts file, and I had to actually go in and comment it out so that it would use the Tailscale IP instead of the local IP. So that was the one thing I had to change on my laptop because I had it configured that way.
It will run as a container, so if you're on an immutable system.
Get myself in trouble. I like getting myself in trouble. Isn't that the point? Why would I run Linux if I wanted it to just work all the time?
Right.
That's where I'm at.
There you go.
Hence
I
your
want it to
answer
need
for
me.
the-
You
hence your
wanted to
answer for
need
the
you.
hardware.
How boring could that be, right?
Ulfnick wants the Christine of Linux distributions.
Right.
There you go.
I feel like I ended up
Uh,
with the money pit of Linux distributions.
Well, speaking of Money Pit, that's a terrible transition. Scratch that. So I'm sure you folks have heard in the news that Red Hat is limiting RHEL sources to CentOS Stream. Is this something that anyone has been following, tracking, or caring about as of late? No, Dan, I think you have probably been on top of it a little bit.
Somebody give us the 30-second synopsis. Like, what does that mean? Limiting it to CentOS streams. Go.
So, all right. So right now they've been publishing the source code alongside with the releases. So that means all of the clones, Alma Linux, Rocky Linux, they can
Right,
all take
right.
those sources, change the trademark bits, get rid of those, and ultimately they end up with a one-to-one, recreation of RHEL. And
Gotcha.
so they in turn, their business model is in turn to then take that and sell services on top of the RHEL clone, if you will.
Yeah.
If now the speak is that they're going to stop, publicly putting out the source code for those, so that now the RHEL clones, they have to do work, if you will, to kind of reverse engineer and recreate that.
Does their license allow for that?
So it does. It's, although it may be a little gray, but nobody probably is going to test that. Here's why. I'll say it does allow for that. Because they don't publicly publish the binaries, they don't have to publish the source code too, alongside. So
Interesting.
they can hold on to that, and the magic sauce here is, sure, upstream is CentOS stream, and then that becomes the next RHEL release, but they do apply a little bit of their own flavor to it before it ends up there. So sometimes bugs are fixed in RHEL that might you might not be able to take from a snapshot in time on CentOS stream, although ultimately CentOS stream is the answer because that's where things go to get fixed, I mean, if you will. So
But
yeah,
there's still going to be something that if you just take the source code from, so CentOS stream is going to be where binaries are published, and then there's going to have to be source code published along with
they
those.
do, they have a Git and they publish all the source code there. And so that is the place, but it's not RHEL. It's not the snapshot in time that RHEL is, and it's not those fixes there. It's not the stable release, and I hesitate to call it anything like rolling because it's not, but it's more rolling than RHEL is. RHEL is a stable release. Here it is. This is what you got until the next snapshot in time, unless it's like a vulnerability, then obviously those get fixed. But the versions you get are locked in.
But if you're a RHEL customer, they have repositories that you're accessing for security updates and stuff like that. So
you can
somehow they're protecting those some, you know, like that you can, well, but all that's not source code. So I guess that
So to
they
even
don't-
to even enable RHEL repos on a box, you have to register it with
Yep.
Red Hat or with your local
Okay.
satellite server that
Okay.
eventually connects to Red Hat. So if you put a RHEL box that you don't have registered to an account,
Yeah.
then you can't even yum install or anything. You
Nope.
can't do anything
Wow.
with it. Like you can
Wow.
use it, but you can't install any additional packages that weren't there. You can't do updates. You can't do pretty much
Huh.
anything really.
Okay. And that, but that's been that way, right? So that's so
Right.
really
Yes.
what do you think that they're trying? Okay, so what have they said? What's the reason they've said they've done this?
I actually have some insider from a Red Hat employee that explained to me
Okay.
some of it. So it's in the show notes, and I'm gonna try to explain it the best that I can to make it make sense. And so basically his response is to seeing all the reaction to the RHEL source stuff. He wants to make sure that the Text Digital and the Destination Linux crew and other podcasts report on it correctly. It says the RHEL source code is still available publicly. It's called CentOS Stream. The source in Stream is the same as RHEL, period, end of story. The rebuilds just will need to be built. We need to build their distro the same way that Red Hat does, RHEL, which is using CentOS Stream sources. So the flow before the change looked like Fedora, and then CentOS Stream, then RHEL, and then rebuilds like Alma, Rocky, and Oracle would all come off of that. It says now the flow looks like Fedora, CentOS Stream, and then your options are RHEL, Alma, Rocky, Oracle off of that. So it's a different way of doing the same thing. So it's not exactly they're limiting it. So I guess maybe it is a little bit more work for the derivatives, but they're not limiting the CentOS Stream, which is where it's being built from. So
Right.
So I guess the question is, are they applying any extra special sauce that's hidden? I don't know.
They are. Yeah.
Maybe
do.
maybe. And
CentOS Stream binaries are not binary compatible with RHEL. There are differences. There are certainly patches.
So they can't make that claim anymore then.
Right. I mean, so the issue is like what he's saying is like that, you know, it goes from Fedora to CentOS Stream, and that all of the derivatives, including RHEL, are off of those packages.
Right.
But just in the way that previously where they would take RHEL packages and change trademarks to make it their own package, RHEL does their own work on their own packages.
Right.
With
And then
bugs and other support as well. Usually my guess is these are generally like customer driven things, like a specific customer will have a need, like, and if it's a large enough customer, that will drive the contribution to
some industrial machine or some
or any
very
number
specific.
of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like then they will include a fix for that in their packages that may not actually be reflected in CentOS because it is a customer driven thing, not a community driven thing.
Yeah.
And so then you will have that definitely be a thing.
I have always, it's puzzled me like that the clones do what they do and sell those services. And I mean, there's the permissiveness there, the source code's there, I get it. But the idea that they could just take out the copyright material and basically put in their own and say, there you go, here's Alma Linux, or, you know, it just, it seems, well, CentOS before it became, you know, which obviously there was enough value there or competition there for them to take that over as well. Yeah, I've always been puzzled by how permissive it is for someone to be able to do that. And I listen, Red Hat's not starving. I don't think these small companies have made that big of a difference. I mean, if someone wants Red Hat, they're going to get Red Hat, you know, and they're not going to go for.
But this type of thing, like with the relicensing and all that, it's nothing new. I mean, you guys surely remember Elasticsearch and their fight against Amazon.
Oh yeah.
And like, so it's kind of these things, and like I understand where Red Hat's coming from in some ways, but also like it's kind of like earlier when you were talking about like upgrading a laptop. It's because that expectation has been built, right? The expectation is that the source was always available and that this was like a thing. This was just how it was done. And then when there's a shakeup, it's like, wait, what? You know?
Well, and that's like a right to refurbish, and the fact that I can take a manufacturer's product and after it's been used, refurbish it and resell it, or like a used game and all the fights that have been around that.
Right.
I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's sort of in that kind of same sphere of like it was originally released as a certain product or intended to be released as a certain product, and it's been
Right.
sort of subverted in a way.
And they have a sort of an out, so to speak, for the community through forking of CentOS Stream, right? But it's
Yeah.
not necessarily binary compatible, but I guess technically they never were, because they made their own changes anyway, and like
Yeah.
the forks would have had to make their own changes, and so
How
I
how
mean,
critical is that though for that? And that claim has always been, yeah, we're
yeah.
binary
So
compatible. I mean,
so if I'm trying to build like a test environment and I don't want to license, a bunch of servers to do like a test environment,
right.
if I test that in my CentOS Stream environment, it's like, yep, checks out, and then I throw it in RHEL and there's something different that I'm not aware of,
Yeah.
suddenly it doesn't work, or maybe there's a
Right.
little quirk with something, or any number of, that kind of thing. So the idea was that you could have that equivalent binary package so that if it worked on CentOS, it'll work on RHEL, right? Or if
Yeah.
it worked on all Meraki, it'll work on RHEL. And
Right.
so I guess in that way, people, maybe they viewed it as people skirting around, like, hey, you're building this test environment, why not just buy RHEL from us? Buy more RHEL, right?
But you could always get a developer license if you can do that anyway, right? I mean, that would be the
Yeah.
argument.
Right.
Those are free.
Yeah.
I did want to point out, since Adam mentioned Elasticsearch, they did end up relicensing their code, so it wasn't under the same code or license that it was
Right.
originally.
Yeah.
So that is different.
This reminds me, you talking about the licensing, and we used to, when I worked for the company I worked for, it was a lot of Oracle stuff.
Mhm.
And oh man, they were brutal when it came to that kind of stuff. And I remember one of our incoming CEOs was like, that's it. We're done. We're going open source. 5 years from now, everything we run is going to be open source, because I am so sick of dealing with companies like Oracle who just want to squeeze us. They come in and they do an audit of all your licenses, and then you're not in compliance. And all of a sudden you got $500,000 worth of license fees, and there goes your quarter, if you're a
Yeah.
small company.
The other sort of
Um,
like ethical side of why Red Hat's business model was good is because it did avoid that lock-in, in
Yeah.
that, like, if your customer buys into your product, right, you like traditionally would want to lock them in, right? Like, hey,
Right.
buy Windows, buy SQL Server, buy Hyper-V, buy all of our stuff, from one place. And Red Hat offered products, but also offered a way that they didn't necessarily have to be locked in. And that kind of goodwill goes a long way into getting them a customer, right? Because if it's like,
Yeah.
even if they do end up sort of quote unquote locked into you, it's nice to know that they didn't have to be, right? And
Yeah.
so it's starting on the right foot, at least from like a moral or ethical
Yeah.
side, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And like that would be, so it's like, it was almost that the only way Red Hat, especially back in the day, could really compete is if they did offer the source code like that, if they did open source their stuff.
Right.
Because if they just tried to be another Me Too enterprise, Oracle, Microsoft, whatever,
Right.
there's no room in that market at the time. So that was essential, but times have changed, money's changed, IBM ate them.
Yeah. I was going to say, do you think you would ever have seen this type of change without that IBM component? And
Negative. No.
yeah.
No
Yeah.
way. No way.
Yeah.
So
Everyone hoped that Red Hat was going to go in and change IBM, and
I'll be honest with you. My previous job, when the day that we found out IBM bought Red Hat, was the day we started transitioning our servers to Ubuntu. It was all of our servers ended up getting transitioned to Ubuntu, because
wow.
we saw this stuff coming this was
Yeah.
like a couple of years ago, 3 years
Yeah.
ago,
Oh yeah, 3
something
years
like
ago.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
Quite a long time. Yeah, we were like, nah, let's bounce.
Oh my.
So I did also notice that some folks at SUSE didn't waste any time in throwing in their 2 cents on the issue as well. which
They need to be more aggressive.
Yeah,
They
this
need
is
to
an
be-
opportunity for SUSE and
Absolutely.
Canonical and Debian as well as the community. Like,
Yep.
what a nice play for Debian, right? Like, hey, we're not attached to any of these rich dudes. Like, you can just come on down, join us,
Right.
right? Yeah, but
Yeah, you want
SUSE
stable?
really
We
could.
got
but
stable.
SUSE
Yeah.
really could make a better push in the US based on this. I really think so. But will they?
They haven't.
yeah.
It always boggles the mind for me. But in Europe, they do, I guess. So in Europe, they could definitely be pushing this harder. I don't know.
So Richard Brown, I love Richard Brown just because he doesn't hold back. He says, so now would be a good time to remind everyone that SUSE ALP will have one-to-one matching products and available both commercially and freely available in OpenSUSE. So he kicked that out there.
Love it.
There'll be in addition to whatever based on ALP offerings the OpenSUSE project builds. So
If I had all the money, I would get YouTube ads for him to do that.
Yep. And I'll tell you what, if anyone out there is looking for an enterprise Linux solution, you better believe my salespeople are going to be in there talking about that.
Yep.
Like you
Yeah.
said, Adam, we're not going to lock in. We're here
Right.
selling support. And that's always, I think, been sort of, to me, a bit of the altruistic component of open source and how companies are successful in open source is it's more about the service, right? The solution, right? We are bringing software to bear, but we're going to provide a solution that fits with your organization and your needs and whatever. And that's the value.
Right.
Just here's a license, here's some software, and if it doesn't quite work for you and you're not a big enough customer, well, tough crap, whatever. But like I've always felt that was the beauty of the open source approach, where like you're buying these services and you're getting that sort of approach and that the hands-on support.
And at the risk of the slippery slope, right? They did this. Why wouldn't they just kill us to CentOS Stream at some point?
well, that's how they
Right.
get community. That's their community tie-in. So when you have bug fixes, it's a way for the community to contribute. That's the purpose of it.
Right. But what if
Yeah.
IBM sees the community as an adversary because of the way they react to these kind of things? And they're like,
If
you know
you
what?
think
How about we just pull from upstream the actual product and build our own stuff, license our own packages one way? Because the code is still GPL or whatever, but they want to sell their product. And like, I mean, it sounds absurd, but so does this. So
if you think their legal team hasn't been looking at that, you're fooling yourself.
right. And honestly, how many open source projects have the resources to go after them?
So I just wanted to bring this question. So every open source project that has like a commercial component of support or something, they always have that possibility that somebody's gonna use their own code to make money off it, right? And pretty much everybody knows that that's there, the code's available and everything. What makes Red Hat different that they can circumvent that?
IBM? Like,
Well, I mean,
real-
that's what Red Hat's always done, right? And that's what we're
Right.
talking about. They
Yeah.
competed. It wasn't about the software. I mean, of course it was. Like the engineers at Red Hat are the ones writing the code, right? And yet there are community patches and submissions and very specific changes probably for people within certain verticals and in industry and other components of their enterprise market that they're supporting. But as a whole, the value is, as a Red Hat customer, that the support component, the support services, the
The throat to choke,
implementation
so to speak.
services, we're going to come in and consult with you on what does this look like for your organization and how many servers do you need and what kind of, I mean, that is an invaluable resource. Just buying a software license doesn't actually deliver any kind of value
Right.
really to an organization. It's all of that other stuff that's behind it. Implementation and project management and that's a lot of heavy lifting kind of stuff, and that's what Red Hat does and did very successfully.
But also part of the thing that Red Hat has benefited from is not just code submissions from the community, but general support from the community. That if people have like issues with, like for example, one that we had was a Gluster storage thing that had a memory leak, and it was a community CentOS forum that found the problem and got it fixed, and Red Hat benefited from that. And because people used it on CentOS, it's like CentOS 7 before the stream thing, and like that kind of thing, right? But if you make these moves like this that seem very adversarial to that community, then you also lose a lot of that community engagement that leads to code fixes, that leads to other things. And like that's the big thing, is like if you are a monolithic software giant like Microsoft, for example, that can have all these engineers and everything in-house and do that, that's cool. The community is less important to that kind of operation. But Red Hat's operation has always been very dependent on community engagement, whether it be code contributions, whether it be bug fixes, bug reports, that kind of thing. Like that's all a big community thing. And this is like kind of like, hey guys, thanks for the help, by the way.
But those of us in IT who have dealt with systems and with implementations and all these things that we're talking about, like the open source model of having a community where you can bring, doing that with closed source software, like you're a Microsoft shop and you have a problem, and the only way for you to fix it is maybe there's some forums or something out there, but it's very difficult because no one knows the code. No one can actually look at it or do anything with it to really make it.
Yep.
And the open source side of that is so completely different. You feel like you're part of, like you have support. I remember, in the days before data centers and virtualization and having all these physical systems in a shop where I'm like literally running it, I felt like I was on my own a lot of times. Like I was where the buck stopped. And if I didn't figure it out, like things didn't work. And when I started embracing open source software, that changed for me because I felt like I was part of something, like I had resources and
suddenly
people
you
to
have
talk
hundreds
to.
of thousands of technical account managers on the internet, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you have a problem on Windows and you try to look that up online, you'll find all sorts of people with a similar issue, and they tell you to do SFC scan now, and it's
Right,
like,
yeah.
has that ever worked for anybody?
Are you telling
ever?
me Jack on the 10forums.org is not an actual sysadmin and doesn't know what he's talking about?
I don't know.
Right.
That's the answer to so many things. Like I think maybe I'm doing it wrong, so I'm
Right.
not sure.
I don't think you're hitting
Yeah.
enter hard enough.
That's yeah.
I do want to give some benefit to Red Hat in one area. They're terrible communicators, just in general. They sometimes they just put their foot in their mouth and they'll backpedal or clarify or something, and so I think it's very often that we'll see. Sometimes it's a bigger deal than maybe it is. Like we don't know that's a problem yet. They just made an announcement, right? And they basically have no assurances in that announcement because they're really good at announcements again. So I'm going to give them, like a wait and see. I mean, but don't get me wrong. I love OpenSUSE. I pay for SUSE, like the actual commercial to support the company because there's no other way to actually support the company, like support OpenSUSE except through SUSE because SUSE does OpenSUSE. So, so that's a, I'm gonna give Red Hat the benefit of the doubt there, just because they are big. They've been contributing in huge ways to the open source. And basically, we have things like Pipewire, a lot of the Wayland stuff that they're working on. GNOME, which, like it or not, GNOME is a significant pusher that really pushes the desktop on Linux in a way, not necessarily the way I like it, but they are pushing it, and they're suggesting ideas that are making us look at desktops differently, and has had an effect on other desktops as a result. So I think, I like to give a little bit of grace to a company or to an organization because sometimes people just say the wrong things. They type the wrong things. They didn't put any emojis in their announcement to know, a smiley face, and then everything would have been better, or thumbs up. I don't know, except for thumbs up. Adam would take that wrong way. Yeah, but
they do have a history.
Red Hat is just the company that would put a thumbs up.
Yeah, no, you're right, and they do have a history of doing things like that where and they could have pretty easily gotten ahead of this and just said, look, be transparent. Like, this is why we're doing it, and we have to do this, or we need to, we want to do it, or whatever. But at least be honest about it instead of just making an announcement, and maybe they're getting there. I don't know, but it seems like they could have been ahead of this a little better and
Yeah.
maybe explained.
It is. Eris, you got another thing you want to
So
throw out
going
there?
off of what you said, I'm gonna read word for word the title of the article that the whole thing started. Furthering the evolution of CentOS Stream. That's the whole title. And then this was highlighted in the article from Red Hat. CentOS Stream will now be the sole repository for public RHEL related source code releases. So probably
Public
that's what
ones.
everybody's gonna read it, and that's
Right.
at least.
So I think their new slogan should be open code, ulterior motives.
Oh my. Well, there's no way that APN was the only organization that, when Red Hat got bought said, yeah, maybe we don't want to deal with IBM. So,
Oh yeah.
Big Blue.
and this, yeah, I mean,
In
maybe,
hindsight, we should have switched to Debian, but whatever.
well, does Debian, they don't have the support though, do they? They don't.
Yeah, we
Ubuntu.
didn't pay for support.
So Ubuntu, I mean, you have in-house people to deal with Ubuntu and everybody's comfortable with, okay.
Yeah, me.
Yeah. There you go. Okay.
No,
Well,
there were a few of us, but yeah.
and
But-
Ubuntu is, I mean, there's enough people that use it, especially on this enterprise side, that there's a pretty rich community out there.
Right, and the same with Debian as well, and that's
Yeah, that's
kinda-
true. That's true.
kind of why I mentioned those,
Just-
right? I'm not gonna have.
But you
Manjaro
would have to
server.
have Debian. I mean, just to be clear, like a lot of shops go with something like Red Hat because of all of the services, because of all the support behind it.
Correct,
And you're-
yeah.
Yeah.
But in
Well, there's
smaller organizations could benefit more from the community aspect of Debian and not
Yeah.
all that.
Right.
So-
there
it's
are
go-
like
it- it's gonna
third-party
be-
entities that do deliver support. It's
Sure,
just not
good point.
directly from
Good
Debian.
point. Good
Yeah.
point.
Right,
So-
yeah,
Yeah.
that's very true.
From another perspective, which larger open source organization, open source software organization, hasn't been mired in some sort of controversy at one point or another? Debian's had its share of it. Arch
Yeah.
steps in it all the time. SUSE
Hey.
has stepped in it. And then, I mean, the big thing when SUSE was like, okay, who's buying them now? Who's buying them now? Like,
I cannot think of a single thing Canonical has been involved in.
oh, good point. Not a single thing.
They are squeaky clean.
Never. I mean, they handle all of their announcements. There's never any confusion or backpedaling.
None at all.
Nope.
If
Always
you,
good.
if you want
Everything's good.
model communication right there, zero damage control being
Yeah.
done. That's
And
your
just great choices that everybody likes.
Exactly.
every time.
Yeah.
There's no controversy.
Hey,
Like just 100% winners.
I have to give Debian credit. I never thought they would ever publish any kind of non-free code. And for them to be like, you know
Yeah.
what, we're going to be realistic here. I give them huge credit for that. I really
Next
do. And I'm
thing you
sure
know, their
pissed a lot of
public
people
code is
off.
not available.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I
Right.
know in my workplace, the IT guy was asking me because he knows I'm in Linux. I use Linux, and he asked because when CentOS, I think he uses CentOS as the server. So he asked me what else is available for that, and I said I don't know because CentOS is not stable, right? I think he's still using the original CentOS before it went to Stream. So
Okay.
that-
Well, yeah.
I-
So that is stable. So if he's on 7,
Yeah.
then
Yes,
then
I think he is, yeah.
Then that's stable. Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
not going anywhere. Yeah.
It's
Still got
not, but
another year of EOL till EOL, right? I think.
I think so.
about
yeah.
a year. Yeah.
But if he's looking to move on from that, then his options are somewhat limited, right? So he's only got like Alma Linux or Rocky Linux or
Yeah.
well,
Gen 2.
Well, that may be a
no,
problem
but
for him as well now, right?
Yeah.
Elmer and Rocky, that may be a
Maybe.
problem as well.
But we
right?
don't know
I
yet.
So I said to him, why don't you go to Debian? But I think he's so comfortable with
different.
the all the commands and stuff. I think he's comfortable with. He knows all the
OpenSUSE.
commands.
SUSE.
Yeah. So
Yep.
well, SUSE is
Lee.
The same commands, is it?
Well,
Would it be
it's
the
similar.
same commands in that?
It's very
Very-
close.
yeah,
It's still
it's closer
RPM
than
based.
Debian's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a lot of the same
sure.
tooling like Firewall D and things like that.
Right.
Oh, it's another good one.
yeah.
Firewall D. Yeah,
or he could go life on the edge and go CentOS Stream. Yeah, it's probably going to work for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Let's face it. I mean, depending on what you're doing, you might be just fine, and you could just hang out over there. But yeah, it's not quite the same.
One of my first servers was a Debian file server, and that thing ran for 7 years in a closet. Probably had a 6-pound glob of like dust in it, but that thing was unstoppable. And yeah, Debian could really carve out. I mean, I'm sure there already is a fairly substantial Debian base out there. I
Did you
mean,
cut it in half and count the rings?
you could have. I mean, it was like a joke after a certain point because the uptime was so high that it just didn't need anything. I would run the updates every so often, and that was it. It did its little file serving duties, and that's really, I think, a lot of this stuff, depending on the mission of the box, what you're doing, and between that and all the cloud services and stuff, there's so many different ways for companies to manage their IT now that didn't exist before, when it was all on-prem and all hardware. And that's where I came from. I feel so old when I talk about this stuff now. Like, time has moved on, But,
you joke about that, but a lot of that stuff's coming back on-prem because
It
people
is,
have
yeah.
figured out their cloud stuff is expensive.
yeah.
The team
Funny
I
how
work,
that works, huh?
the team I work on at work is the on-prem team, and we have gotten an increased workload and it's there's a lot of that.
I used to, I know I'm just like taking up time for no reason, but I used to love going into the server room and just having the fans, and there's something it's like an isolation tank or something, it was just it was loud, but isolating in that sense.
It's cathartic.
And it was, and I'd have my one terminal with the monitor and controlled all the different machines from there, and I'd just kind of stand there and verify backups or do something dumb just for a reason to be standing in there.
The winter
But
time, you go stand in the hot aisle.
yeah. Nobody could find me in there. When I wanted to run away, needed a break.
Yeah. Let's just say noise canceling headphones are useful.
Yeah, man. I set up a desk, desktop monitors, all that stuff right in the server room. Hid out in there for like a year, just in the air conditioning. 90 degrees outside, and I'm wearing like a coat to work.
Yeah.
Times.
They're like, Brian's got problems, man. We want to.
Yeah. Eventually, they're like, "Hey, you need to take a real desk because we're worried about you."
Yeah, it looks like
reaches out
Colin
like-
with his beanie and his coat on.
Right. It's summer, Colin. Come on, man.
It's winter there though.
Yeah, for some.
So he says.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
I don't believe him. I think he's just playing around with us.
Well, I know he's been surviving Australia now, and that's a rough place to live. Apparently, got to be able to box kangaroos at the drop of a hat.
You got all those animals that can kill you.
Yeah, don't you support it,
It's a
John?
dangerous place to be.
Yeah. All right. Well, I thought that was a great conversation. Thank you so much. I think we had a nice civil, discourse over Red Hat's decision. I guess we'll see. And I think it's healthy for the community to rather than scream at a webcam or write angry blog posts. I think it's good to just discuss it, talk about it, and just hash it out. Maybe it's gonna be a big train wreck. Maybe it won't. We truly don't know.
I think it's going to be an opportunity, and that's the way we need to look at it.
Yeah.
Is it's an opportunity for other distributions to diversify and have and it ends up being good for all of Linux.
And I forget who said this to me recently, but it said maybe it's like a train rolling down a dirt road, and I'm like, that sounds not good. Whatever, it just sounds terrible.
Trains need a track.
I know.
Yeah. Sounds like a derailment. I don't know.
But if it's actually upright in the right anyway, it made me laugh nonetheless. So next week is an application appetizer. We're going. I would actually really like to maybe let's all try out Tailscale. Now, those of us that have it, they can be the subject matter experts in the chat, and can maybe field some questions or point us to good resources since we have enough people actually using it. I think just the what I've heard here has been the best advertisement for it, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts that push this. So this is, I think it's worth giving a shot, unless somebody else has a better idea. Eris usually has a better idea. Or
Eric
not.
says nothing. I think he agrees.
I think he's along.
Or maybe his silence is a silence of disappointment. I don't know. I can never really tell. So. Oh, he unmuted. Oh, he muted again. I don't know.
I don't know. Tailscale's interesting. I don't know if everybody can do it though. How easy is it?
Easy.
Yeah,
It's,
It's
it
super
couldn't be
easy.
easier.
I already
Yeah,
installed
Literally.
it
Yeah.
on one machine. Yeah.
It does require you to leave home though.
Oh,
Test out.
Yeah,
Does it
yeah.
not?
That's not
another
true. You
story,
can
though.
remote into another machine and still test it that
Go
way.
to the library.
Hotspot on your phone, and then yeah.
There you go.
okay.
See, Adam's got to figure out.
Yeah, there's some things I'm now interested in trying, and I got to make sure I flesh out those ideas. But I'll definitely share them with you, Eris, after the fact.
Wait.
So
Can we do a combination of Tailscale and touching grass?
that might be
know
dangerous
what?
because there's
You
some
know,
places
it's-
where the grass is dangerous, like
Yeah.
Australia.
Or there
Well,
might be
that's
dog
what we
poop
need
in
to
it.
know. So we need
Oh,
people to
yeah.
try it out.
That's
Yep.
outside though.
Yeah.
You mentioned head scale, and I actually think since I've tried Tailscale, if I have the time this week, I may try head scale just to see what's involved.
Just wait till leg scale.
Is that a
The set-
thing, or
setting.
are you trolling me?
No, head scale is the thing. It's a self-hosted Tailscale.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
gonna say,
No, that's what I'm saying. Like he brought it to my attention. I hadn't realized that you could do that. So I think what I may do if I have the time is to actually try setting up head scale
Oh,
to see how hard it is. Because I mean, if you can host it yourself, then that's what a lot of people like to do. And
sure.
so
I
I
can
have
just
no
think of a-
reason not to trust Tailscale because I mean, you are logging in, you are installing their software. You know,
It's just good to have
But
options.
But it is WireGuard encrypted, so
right? No, I have. There's no reason I can see not to trust Tailscale. That was probably my first thought was like, what am I putting on my system here? You know, that kind of thing. But like
Sure.
you look at it and
Yeah.
you think, well, there's really not much here that like they're not capturing anything or, you know, and it is all encrypted and da da da. So I mean,
Is it end-to-end encrypted, or is it encrypted to Tailscale servers and then re-encrypted back to your device?
No, it's end-to-end
end-to-end.
encrypted.
yeah,
Yeah. So like I said, like Tailscale just brokers the connections. It just tells you how to complete the path basically.
Gotcha.
Then you're connected directly.
Pretty cool.
Vince says that head scale is a great name for a shampoo.
Sure.
dry scalp. Yeah.
Try head scale.
Yeah.
Better than scalding, I suppose.
Right.
All right.
Wait,
well,
it's Nair.
So-
Oh god.
So this Tailscale you can't use on a home network. No, you got to actually be off the home network. Is that right for it to work?
No,
Or-
you can
No.
you can be connected within the same network. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All
But
right.
the advantage is if you have your laptop at home and another machine, they can still connect across your local network. But if you then take your laptop outside, you can still connect to that other machine.
right. I was just
Okay.
thinking, like, if I want to print some stuff when I'm at work, at home, if that'd
Subnet
be
router.
possible. Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, there's
Does
some
this
things
mean
I'm
I
gonna
can?
Yeah,
Does this mean I can
think
finally stop using Hamachi?
Oh, I was just gonna
No.
mention
No.
that. So this is like Hamachi, right?
Yeah.
Look, Xfire will live on forever. Don't stop me.
I don't know Hamachi at all.
configure default setting. I don't know Hamachi, so I'm trying to
Hamachi
look.
was-
It's an old,
Oh, okay.
it's a really
go ahead.
old VPN type
Yeah.
software
Yeah, a lot
back
of
from the
gamers use
early
it.
2000s. Yeah,
Oh.
we did to play like LAN games over the internet.
Yeah, play like StarCraft LAN over the internet or something
Oh.
like that.
Yep, yep.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. This looks like it's more extending networks. I don't know that it works like this sort of layered client setup. I don't know. Maybe Maybe it is similar.
All right. Well, Tailscale next week.
Except
Give it a try.
that Hamachi is a logmein thing, which is
It got bought
I
later by
can't.
Logmein.
Yeah, I got bought in the Logmein.
Logmein
was-
is a non-starter with me.
Right. No, you're
It was basically a way that
Yeah.
you could play games that weren't designed for internet play because they were designed for LAN play, and you could play them with other people that way. Through the internet.
Gotcha. And then it
without
got
GameSpy.
destroyed by Logmein. When Logmein bought what was the password manager? LastPass. When they bought LastPass, like that was as soon as they bought them, I'm like, I'm out later.
I don't know the dislike for Logmein.
They're just, in my opinion, they're an unsavory company with some of their policies with software in the past.
I've seen them kick 2 dogs.
There we go. As long as they
That
weren't
seals the
puppies.
deal right there.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, LastPass was in the news again this week.
Oh,
Gee, really?
for something good, I suppose, because the news is always good.
No.
Something tells me that won't,
Always
something
good
tells
news
me
with
that won't be
LastPass.
the last pass through the news.
Nope.
Yee. Oh, by the way, Adam, did I hear you say Gentoo when people were suggesting different distros?
Why would I have said that?
You did, didn't you?
I
Of
did,
course,
yeah.
Of course he would.
I
You
thought
meant
I
Arch.
caught it. Oh God, you're too much, man.
Sent to servers.
You make me laugh. Yeah, I've been compiling my Gentoo server for the last 2 days.
All
So
right.
just so I know what I'm dealing with here, this Tailscale is like TeamViewer or AnyDesk or something like that. Is that?
No,
No.
it's a way of connecting your machines together. So like you have IP addresses on your local network.
Yeah.
It creates like a separate kind of virtual network between
Mhm.
machines you have the client running on.
Right.
And so
Okay.
they have their own IP on this like virtual network. And so it allows them to connect to each other regardless of where you're at. So instead of being on your local IP, it'll have its own Tailscale.
Okay.
So
Right.
here's how I use the Colin. So I have my desktop computer is hosting a remote desktop setup. And I normally am at home and I'm connecting to that over the LAN with my laptop. So what I did was install Tailscale on both my desktop and my laptop. And then I went somewhere else and I used that same client, the desktop remote software client, and connected as though I was still on the LAN. Like it just extends your network
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. That sounds
between
more-
those machines. So it's
Fair
like
enough.
a VPN, but it's between those systems that you have it installed on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll give you another
Okay.
example. I have Nextcloud here and it's not exposed to the internet. I have no ports open on my router at all. And I have Tailscale installed on it. I also have Tailscale installed on my phone. So whether I'm here at home or I go away to work or I go anywhere with my phone, obviously I can't, connect back in via normal means, but I never lose connection to my Nextcloud. So I can always upload my photos and stuff
Yeah.
and keep that stuff synced.
And by not
Right.
opening ports, it's a more secure way
Right.
to access it. Yeah.
And I can confirm those are good photos. So
Yeah, they're great.
Do you do like photo
Wow.
backup and stuff with
I do. I back up to Nextcloud. I mean,
Nice.
obviously, yeah.
That's cool. Nextcloud really seems like they've been pumping out new stuff. Like I really wasn't sure if they were going to get any traction, but it really seems like people are committed to it. Yeah.
Yeah. It
That would
does
be
seem like
another good one, I think. I mean, I don't know that everybody's going to set up their own
Right.
version of it, but that is, you talk about a powerful open source project, man.
Yep.
You can
with
do
some momentum
really,
too.
yeah, right.
All right, for some housekeeping real quick. If you have any discussion suggestions, anything we should talk about, feel free to send them to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, or anything if you think we should try out a distro, a very cool distro, or anything applications, poll ideas. Feel free to send those to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com or tag myself or Eris or somebody, a regular, in the Telegram or Discord. Yeah. So also we have a Linux Saloon calendar, so I will update that. But it's a Google Calendar. So speaking of self-hosting, I'm not self-hosting a calendar, so you can use the Google Calendar I set up because I don't want to mess with that. Nextcloud, I suppose, maybe at some point. All right, so it is time for last call. Eric, you are part of the Distro Hoppers Digest. So what's coming up next?
I am. We have a 1 month gap between shows where we will pick a distro and test that out, and then also just be using our technology like we normally would, and then report back on that as well. So we're sort of in that cycle of testing things out, and we'll get back together here in a couple weeks and tell everybody about it.
So what episode's coming up? Is it 43 or 44?
54.
54. Wait.
If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Let me see. It might be, you're right. I think it's 44, not 54.
It was just 42, and I don't think that many months.
No,
passed.
it's 43. It's 44.
44.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, not 44,
Right.
not 54.
I keep track of these things for you, Eric.
I'm glad. Good Lord. Thank you.
So Dan.
Yeah, so that'll be 44. Sorry. Good.
So Dan, Linux User Space, you guys are on kind of a break right now for summer.
Yep. We're on our little hiatus,
Yep.
but you'll find some little short releases. Leo likes to cut out like just the history bits and repost those as singles, we'll call them, and you'll see those crop up from time to time.
Sweet.
And like I said, we've been doing other projects during our off season. So our first distro that we've picked is Debian 12, which just came out. Very fortunate for us. That's kind of why we picked it. Got a huge history though, so that's one of the reasons why we picked it during the off season. That'll show up in episode 2 of season 4, and then all season long, to appease the trolls like Adam, we are doing Gentoo, and so we'll talk about that a little bit throughout the season. So that should be exciting as well.
Well, that's beautiful.
Look,
And
man, I
looking
make
forward to
jokes,
that.
but you don't need to self-harm. It's okay.
So
I'm looking forward to that.
I was actually going to ask if you and Leo had curry together and talked about it and how that went, but apparently you already answered that question.
Yeah, we didn't have any curry. We talked about having barbecue, but I didn't quite make it to Texas, so maybe next season.
I flew over Abilene. I think it was Abilene. So I didn't stop by. Did anybody else have anything you want to talk about? Colin, you're getting ready to do some videos, you said. Got anything coming up?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
The cold actually reduces my motivation.
I understand, yeah. I absolutely understand. And if anybody else,
He's one of those reptilians.
yeah,
He is. The truth
Gotta
comes
go
out.
outside on to warm up with the sun.
Yeah.
yeah, get one of those like heat lamps. He puts it in his bathroom. Hangs it over the shower stall so he can regenerate. I'm on a podcast called Linux Out Loud. We had to take a week off for reasons, but check out our back catalog. We do a lot of fun things, and I enjoy doing the podcast. So I have 2 co-hosts, Matt and Wendy, and Wendy I'm a huge fan of, and then there's Matt.
I enjoy that you guys talk about the hardware stuff, and that you all 3 have different interests and motivations, and I like that you talked about budget. That was a really good episode. Yeah, you definitely check out Linux Out Loud. There's a lot in there. A lot of personal stuff, but then a lot of like really useful. You've been talking about your laptop, and yeah, it's there's a lot to listen to. Yeah, always something to.
It's just some jabbering basically. It's kind of like yeah, it's fun. It's like getting together with your buds and talking about things.
And you pick on Matt, so it makes that always is a nice element too.
And he picks back. So, but it's truly it's fun for me.
It is. It is.
I also have a website called cubiclenate.com. I do things sometimes when I'm not up to my eyeballs. Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. Check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com, like Destination Linux. We've got This Week in Linux, Sudo Show, Hardware Addicts. So those are great shows. And now that I have a commute, I get to get all caught up on my podcast. It's been great. I want to thank you all for your support, however you do it, and being a part of the conversation, both this Zoom meeting here or on the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact. Sorry, I'll publish that last one. I totally biffed that up, so I apologize to everybody. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back in a personal computer. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yas.
You guys.
See ya.
Pulling Q to quit.
Yeah.
With a
Man,
big
the
cart.
coffee
Big-
shops around
got a-
here, they don't. Oh, go ahead, man.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say that.
Anybody else have anything they wanna plug? No? All right. I think I can do.
The best part of this week's show is seeing Dan again.
Oh,
Hey,
yeah, for sure.
it was good to be here. It really was. It was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
The worst part was seeing Vince again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Poor Vince. Well, I mean, he's surprisingly survived the getting beat up by kangaroos too.
I'm not very surviving
well-
the cold though.
Yeah, we're getting gang tackled by polar bears over here in Australia. That's what's going on right now.
Gotcha.
When
And
you
don't
go-
forget, Nate. Don't forget, Nate. Kangaroos are just deer that's been in jail, right?
That's right. Yeah, kangaroos that have served time in prison. I think more so.
Yeah.